All right, welcome everybody who has joined us today. Welcome to our first ever Hot Start webcast. We're excited to kick off this content stream. We hope you guys find it valuable. First one today, we're going to be talking about the modern developer funnel and how we can use hands-on labs to make it even more effective than it is. In case you can't see on the screen there, my name is Sean Lauer. I am the head of marketing and product here at Instruqt. Jeff, you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, Jeff Pistone, solutions engineer at Instruqt. Happy to be here.
Great. So we've got an exciting agenda for you guys today. We've got our demo guru, Jeff, here, who's going to show you some actual tips and tricks from within the product. But first, we kind of want to set the context and set the stage before we get into the product itself. So obviously, a lot of you guys joining today, you know Instruqt. You know how Instruqt can really be the go-to platform for hands-on product adoption. And we like to say throughout sort of the go-to-market process. And from that, we mean marketing, sales, and education. Across each one of these three buckets, across these kind of orgs or teams within each company, we have significant value and impact that we see when teams fully adopt Instruqt. On the marketing side, it really helps with lead generation and turning prospects into customers. On the sales side, we can really eliminate friction in the technical sales cycle with POVs, POCs, hands-on demos. That's kind of how Jeff actually uses it in his day-to-day. And then obviously with education, I mean, everything we do in Instruqt is largely centered around education, but education teams specifically, those that are geared towards customer onboarding, customer upskilling, there's significant impact when you bring in hands-on labs. However, today, we are actually going to dive deeper into marketing. So you click forward on the slides there. We know that there's a lot of challenges, obviously, in the developer marketing funnel. I think the cliche, obviously, is, developers don't want to read, they want to get hands-on. But when it comes to a funnel perspective, we hear a lot from developer relations folks and others that the funnel is really top heavy, that form gated content provides a lot of challenges and a lot of blockers in order to actually understanding who is engaging with your information. There's a lot of hoops that different teams have to jump through. There's very little, or even in some cases, no intent data. So it's hard to really qualify the leads that you are getting. And scaling is always a challenge, but it's even harder to scale when you don't have that intent data, or you don't have the ease of access to the product that a lot of developers are looking for. So, that disjointed experience and that wasted time and wasted resources really becomes a pain point that, again, we feel hands-on labs is pretty strong at solving for our customers. So, we did this study a few months ago, and I think it produced a very kind of relevant insight for the conversation today. Again, we talk about how developers really want to get hands-on. They don't want to be talked to. They don't want to be sold. They don't want to have to watch videos or read documents. They actually want to get their hands on the product. And what we found in the study that we did was that people definitely ranked hands-on real-world training environments as the most effective at driving developer adoption. But it was only about a third of folks that were actually using hands-on real-world training environments. So there's a clear gap between what people know actually works to drive leads and convert them versus what people are actually doing in their day-to-day. So we're looking to help obviously close that gap. And a lot of our top customers are doing that really effectively today, which we'll talk to you a little bit more about. So we're going to introduce a new term today based on, really closing that gap and, using hands-on labs with Instruqt to generate those leads, but also qualify them at a higher level than, say, you're currently doing with MQLs. So Instruqt-qualified leads is a term that honestly, we actually didn't necessarily coin. We have some customers who are categorizing leads as Instruqt-qualified today. So it is something that we've seen out there in the market that, the leads coming through Instruqt are actually higher intent and they need to be kind of categorized separately. So we can bucket these, the signals that really drive the IQLs, the Instruct qualified leads. We can bucket them into three core buckets. First of which we're calling engage, which really allows you to capture the signals about how much and how deeply prospects or leads explore your product. Everything from the time in the lab, repeat visits, the number of challenges finished, the number of scenarios progressed, and then basic things like clicks and core feature usage. The next bucket that we can look at, we call signal, which really involves revealing the buyer intent and readiness. And you can look at, call it higher intent, pun intended, higher intent signals like forms submitted, feedback given, and then even friction points where users get stuck or ask for help, as those can obviously be very important signals from the lead generation process. Lastly, we have a bucket we call convert. This really brings in the signals that are actually more relevant to whether they're moving towards adoption of the product. Things around collaboration and sharing, whether they're sharing results, inviting teammates, post-lab actions. We can look at things like pricing page visits and trial activations. So obviously you can connect the dots kind of across these three buckets using the data that you can get through Instruqt, but also through your own kind of data platforms that really work well together. Again, that really lead to these higher intent Instruqt qualified leads that are really valuable for you. So just a few quick stories here. I mean, obviously, who is using Instruqt today for these? Well, to be honest, we have a lot of our customers using Instruqt for marketing and Instruqt for lead generation, but we wanted to pull out a few just quick quotes that we have from some of our customers that we have talked to more in depth, like Jeff here from SUSE. So obviously, they're using us to generate leads. You can see an image here from a workshop they did. I believe this was potentially SUSE Day at KubeCon. But as Jeff says here, by using Instruqt, by using hands-on labs, participants are more engaged, more informed, and more ready for meaningful follow-up conversations. Again, they've already gotten hands-on with the product, so it really lends them to be, in this upper echelon of quality leads that we call Instruqt-qualified leads. Another example here would be Diagrid and Dapper, which is being talked about here by Mark, who's a senior developer advocate. It's a massive win for making learning and adoption easier. Obviously, learning and adoption is, like I said, what's at the core of driving the lead generation. It is sort of learning marketing, if you will, where the content is learning content, but it is generating these hands-on, high-quality Instruqt qualified leads that, again, really set us apart and really will help set you apart and drive more conversion of the folks you're looking to convert. And that's my setup. At this point, I do want to toss it over to Jeff to actually dive into the product. Jeff, as he said, is a sales engineer. He is talking to customers and prospects on a day-to-day basis. He is our guru. So if you have questions, please throw them into the chat. We will try to answer them live or at the end. And with that, I will toss it over to Jeff to talk a little bit more.
So wanted to start with just a couple of quick real-world examples of how folks are integrating Instruqt's hands-on capabilities into their own existing collateral, right? Because it's one thing to maybe show a video or have some documentation that shows your product off. That's all well and good. But giving folks right alongside that a chance to get their hands on it and try it out and really interact with it, it's a pretty powerful experience. So the first example I have here is HashiCorp. This is on one of their developer tutorial pages for Vault. You can see here up at the top here, it says show terminal. And when I do so, I get a nice little sliding window here that pops up and I can jump right into an Instruqt lab. It tells me exactly what I'm going to do. So I can read this as a potential customer or maybe somebody who's used Vault in the past and I want to get my hands back on it and re-engage with the tool. This is going to tell me exactly what I need to know, and I can decide, oh, okay, this is going to be good. This is what I want to learn about. And then while I'm doing this, I can kind of move around up here and see what's going on. This is a really nice sort of customized way that HashiCorp has integrated this into their own documentation here. Another example is MongoDB. So MongoDB has what they call their university for training, certification, things like that. And they use Instruqt kind of front and center to help with that process. So in this case here, I would click on this lab. I'm interested in learning more about the Mongo shell. And I can jump right in here and go through this class. And in the process of doing so, once I complete a certain number of labs and I prove a certain amount of knowledge, I can get my certification right from Mongo here because they're able to see what I've completed. And I'll show you what that looks like on the Instruqt side in a minute. But directly from their university, they're able to integrate this into their system, and they can see, all right, Jeff took this class, he completed all the steps. That means that he knows enough that we're going to say, yes, you are Mongo Shell certified. So creating content in Instruqt is pretty straightforward, but something that a lot of folks sometimes ask about is, okay, I've got all this great content out there. What's the best way to, push it out to the world and make the world aware that I have all this out here? Maybe you don't have a fancy setup or a learning management system. Maybe you're not quite at the level of, what HashiCorp was doing there, where they've got a nice sliding window. There's CSS wizards over there. Maybe you just kind of want to start simple and you want to send out some links, right? So we're gonna meet you where you are and help you get to where you want to be. So we do this with invites. Invites are a really, really easy way to just create a shareable link or a snippet of code that you can embed, like an iframe in your website, and boom, it's just going to give you access to this Instruqt content here. So as we scroll down here, you can see I've selected a little bit of content that I want to add. I've got some choices here for if I want to restrict, how many times people can play this. So we give you a lot of control over how wide open you want this to be or how restrictive you want. And Sean mentioned, gating forms that can kind of be sometimes a bit of a barrier, a little too much friction for folks. So we're going to give you the option to, either throw that away and you don't need to have any sort of gated field. You can specify specific email domains if you want to, but for go-to-market purposes, for lead gen purposes, this is what we're most commonly seeing folks doing. And you can actually pick from a whole bunch of different options here of what you want the user to leave behind, what's useful for you, what's useful for your lead gen process and your qualification process. So it's a very flexible system, a very flexible way to create ways to invite people into the content. So once you, I'm actually going to skip over to this tab here. Once you do that, sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place. Once you do that, you're going to have access to some metrics. You're going to see some really good information about, who's been in here over the course of a certain period of time. What are the classes that they're taking? How long have they been engaged in each one? So if, for example, I click into user sessions here, maybe I want to expand this out to the last 3 months. And I can see here some of these. This is an example here of our Instruqt support organization here, but I can come in here and I can look at different plays and I can see, okay, how long were people actually in here, right? How long did it take them to complete things? For example, this one here, I can look at the activity log and I can see how long somebody was in here. Did they go through it pretty quickly, or did they maybe spend some time and not get a certain concept? This kind of goes back to what Sean was talking about with the concept of an IQL, where you not only know that this person, Mike Johnson at Acme Corporation joined this track and took the track and gave you feedback. You not only know that, but you might also be able to go in there and see, okay, he maybe struggled a bit. This part of the track that took, it was supposed to take 5 or 10 minutes. He was in there for 35 minutes, right? Did he struggle with that? Maybe we should reach out and use that as a lever when you're talking to people to say, hey, did you find this difficult? And you've instantly got something to start talking to customers about. So it gives you that much more flavor and that much more, rich conversation that you can have with customers. We've got a lot of metrics built into the platform. I could probably spend a half an hour just talking about all the metrics we have. But if you're interested in learning more about this, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to show you more of this. Another great way to share content that you've created with the world email links are great. Put them out on Twitter, put them on LinkedIn. You might have marketing campaigns where you're blasting things out that way. That's fantastic. But another way that's kind of a lightweight and easy thing to do, especially for smaller companies or people who maybe they're a larger company and they don't want to have to go through like an onerous process to update a web page. We offer our own solution for that we call landing pages. So we will host these for you within your own Instruqt organization. This is an example of one here that we use for various conferences that we go to. This just shows some real world lab examples here. And when you go and you click on any of these, if any of these are interesting to you, it will actually take you, directly to a page where you can launch the track and you can see what's going on. Landing pages are pretty easy to set up, just like the other invites that I showed you before. You can, if you choose, you can gate the content so that when somebody comes into that page and they click on it, before they're allowed to take the track, before they can access that lab, they'll have to leave behind some details. You can enable this, disable this. You can have as little or as much information as you want. It's really up to you how much friction or how much process you want folks to go through, a little bit or a lot. But it's very easy to get this set up. This took me about 20 seconds to set up. The hardest part was finding the the generic clip art to put in here. But once you do so, you've got a pretty easy way to set things up. And then, of course, if our built-in metrics are not quite up to snuff for you, or if you like those and you also want to have a more permanent record, this kind of talks to some of what Sean was talking about before with different stages of the funnel. Salesforce, HubSpot, we do have integrations to both of those tools. So once you set this up, you've got a whole lot of options here for different things that we can do in a Salesforce org. So, for example, if a lead exists, we're going to match a particular play of an Instruqt track. That's a new object we create. We'll match that to an existing lead. Or if a lead does not exist that matches the data that they leave behind, we'll go ahead and create a new lead for you in Salesforce if you want. If you don't want us to do that, we don't have to. We also use the chatter functionality extensively. So that is where we will note things like, when did the users start a class? How long were they in there? Did they leave behind any feedback? And that will all be stored in there, so you can see that. And that's just another signal. That's just another piece of data that you can use when you do that outreach eventually. And when you talk to folks, you have that rich history of their engagement with your tool and your platform, and their experience coming up to it, rather than going in cold and saying, oh, I see that you clicked on a PDF and maybe you read it, maybe you didn't. So you've got a lot more information about that person, and you can really sort of double click on what they're interested in. And that is just about all I wanted to show, Sean. So I will go ahead and toss it back to you.
So good. I just put in the chat, if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in there. There was one that came through. I'll just read it out loud just for the sake of the recording. But there was one about just what are the general costs of Instruqt or Instruqt services. In general, costs vary based on usage level. There's a few other factors, but that's something that we could obviously discuss if you want to follow up. We could set up a call quickly to go over how we estimate our costs. It looks like maybe somebody's typing one more question in the chat. I'll just talk about this slide quickly. Obviously, if you want to get in touch, I put my email. You can also scan this QR code, which will, I believe it brings up a form where you can reach out to us, but you can also ping us directly. James asks, are the Salesforce integration items in the docs? I would like to share them with teammates. Jeff responds in time. Yes, they are. So Jeff just shared the link. We have more information in our docs. Again, docs.instruct.com. We'll also share with you a lot of other information about our products. All right, well, we teed this up as a hot start, something that is supposed to be a much sort of lighter, quicker, almost TED Talk style webinar for us. So if there's no more questions, I think I'm going to say thank you, Jeff, for your time. Thank you for showing us a little bit more about how we believe, Instruqt-qualified leads are the future of the developer marketing funnel. They are more high quality, high intent. And for anybody listening, we'd love to talk to you more about it. So I will thank everyone for the time and have a good rest of your day.
Have a great day.